Most hotel guests didn't notice how the night auditor's eyes tracked certain visitors who never stayed overnight, or how he positioned himself to observe elevator traffic that had nothing to do with legitimate hotel business. They just wanted clean rooms and good service. They had no idea the man checking them in once investigated criminal enterprises that used hotels as operational headquarters. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden vigilance and protecting legitimate businesses from criminal exploitation, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. The Grand Plaza Hotel operated 24 hours a day, serving business travelers, tourists, and convention guests who needed comfortable accommodations in the heart of downtown. The night shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., when the hotel transformed from a bustling business hub into a quieter operation focused on late arrivals, emergency services, and maintaining security for sleeping guests. Tony Castellano had worked the night audit position for 3 years, managing check-ins, monitoring security systems, and ensuring that the hotel provided safe, professional service during the overnight hours when most staff had gone home. At 59, he looked exactly like what he claimed to be, a retired hospitality manager who enjoyed the steady work and quiet atmosphere of overnight hotel operations. But Tony's observation of guest behavior went far beyond normal customer service. While most hotel staff focused on room availability, guest satisfaction, and maintaining property standards, Tony automatically monitored visitor patterns that could indicate criminal activity. His trained eye recognized when legitimate hotel business was being used as cover for illegal operations. His experience taught him to distinguish between normal guest behavior and criminal coordination. What the hotel guests didn't know was that Tony Castellano had never been a hospitality manager. For 18 years, he'd been Detective Tony Castellano, Vice Squad, specializing in prostitution investigations, drug distribution networks, and criminal enterprises that used legitimate businesses like hotels, bars, and restaurants as operational headquarters for illegal activities that corrupted entire neighborhoods. His retirement 3 years ago had been planned. His ability to recognize vice crime operations had been permanent. "Good evening," Tony said to the businessman checking in at midnight, noting that the man's expensive suit and nervous demeanor suggested someone involved in activities that had nothing to do with legitimate business travel. "Room for one night," the man said, paying cash and avoiding eye contact in ways that triggered every instinct Tony had developed during nearly 2 years, decades of vice crime investigation. But what made Tony's training activate wasn't the late check-in or cash payment. Hotels regularly accommodated travelers with unusual schedules and payment preferences. What concerned him was the pattern of similar visitors over the past month, all requesting rooms on specific floors during specific time windows that suggested coordination rather than coincidence. Over the next week, Tony found himself conducting the kind of covert observation that had characterized his police career. Not obvious surveillance, just the systematic documentation of guest patterns that distinguished legitimate hotel business from criminal operations using hospitality venues as fronts. The suspicious guests weren't normal travelers. They arrived and departed at coordinated times, used rooms for periods shorter than legitimate overnight stays, and conducted activities that generated foot traffic inconsistent with standard hotel business. Most concerning, Tony recognized the specific operational patterns he'd seen during vice investigations. Criminal networks using hotel rooms as locations for prostitution, drug distribution, and coordination meetings while maintaining the appearance of legitimate business activity. "Tony," said Maria Santos, the day shift manager, "we've been getting some complaints about noise and unusual activity on the 7th floor. Nothing specific, just strange patterns that don't match normal guest behavior. Tony had been monitoring the seventh floor for 2 weeks, documenting evidence of criminal activity that hotel management wouldn't recognize, but that was immediately obvious to someone who had spent his career investigating vice crimes. That evening, Tony did something he hadn't done since his official retirement. He called a number that connected him to people who still fought the battles he'd once led. Vice Squad, Detective Lisa Rodriguez speaking. Lisa, this is Tony Castellano. There was a pause. Tony? How's the hotel business? Complicated, Tony said, sitting in the hotel office with guest records and security footage that looked like normal business documentation, but represented evidence of systematic criminal operations. Lisa, I need to report suspected vice crime activity involving hotel room coordination. Detective Rodriguez had worked with Tony for 7 years before his retirement. She knew that when Tony Castellano called about suspected vice crime activity, it meant criminal networks were using legitimate businesses for illegal operations that needed to be stopped. What are you seeing? Tony provided details with the precision that had made him legendary in vice crime investigations: guest patterns, operational indicators, coordination timing, and criminal signatures that suggested organized prostitution and drug distribution rather than legitimate hotel business. Tony, Rodriguez said after he finished, will coordinate with organized crime and hotel licensing divisions. Can you maintain normal operations while we develop surveillance? Affirmative, Tony said, but they're expanding operations. Based on the guest traffic patterns, they're planning to use additional floors and may be coordinating with other hotels in the area. What happened next was 18 years of vice crime expertise compressed into the most important hotel shift of Tony's civilian life. He returned to the Grand Plaza the following night, not just as a hotel night auditor, but as an experienced detective conducting surveillance in an environment where criminals thought their operations were invisible among legitimate hospitality business. Over the next month, Tony coordinated with Detective Rodriguez's team to document a comprehensive vice crime network that was using hotel rooms across 3 different properties to coordinate prostitution, drug distribution, and money laundering operations while corrupting hotel staff and exploiting legitimate hospitality businesses. We've arrested 15 suspects, including 2 hotel employees at other properties, Rodriguez told him during a briefing at the Grand Plaza after the operation concluded. The criminal network was generating over $300,000 monthly through coordinated vice operations while using legitimate hotel business as cover. Impact on the hospitality industry? Tony asked. They were systematically corrupting hotel operations, bribing staff, and using guest rooms for criminal activities that would have destroyed the reputation of legitimate businesses. Your identification of the operational pattern prevented what could have been a complete takeover of downtown hotel properties by organized crime. The investigation revealed that the vice crime network had been operating for over 2 years, progressively expanding from single hotel rooms to comprehensive criminal operations that threatened to transform legitimate hospitality businesses into criminal headquarters. Local news covered the story as a major vice crime bust by specialized police units, with no mention of the hotel night auditor who had recognized the criminal patterns or the vice squad veteran who had provided the expertise that protected legitimate businesses from criminal exploitation. A few weeks later, the Hotel Industry Association approached Tony about developing security protocols for preventing criminal exploitation of hospitality businesses. Mr. Castellano, said Hotel Security Director Patricia Williams, we understand you have extensive experience in recognizing suspicious guest behavior. Tony looked around the Grand Plaza lobby where legitimate business travelers were checking in, families were beginning vacations, and hotel staff were providing professional hospitality services without being exploited by criminal networks. Some, he said simply. "We'd like to implement enhanced awareness training for hotel staff to recognize vice crime indicators. Would you be willing to help develop those protocols?" "Of course," Tony replied. "Protecting legitimate businesses from criminal exploitation is everyone's responsibility, especially in the hospitality industry, where guest safety and business integrity depend on recognizing when normal operations are being used for illegal activities." What the hotel security director didn't know was that she'd just asked one of the region's most experienced vice crime investigators to train hotel staff to recognize exactly the kind of criminal operations Tony had spent his career dismantling. Tony never told hotel guests about his vice squad background or the criminal networks he'd investigated. He never mentioned the prostitution rings he'd dismantled or the drug operations he'd disrupted in hospitality venues. He just worked the night audit shift every evening, provided professional hotel services, and quietly watched for guest patterns that indicated criminal networks were using legitimate hospitality businesses for illegal operations. But word spread through law enforcement that if anyone noticed unusual guest behavior or suspicious activity at hotels, they should probably consult with the night auditor at the Grand Plaza. Not officially, of course, just as a professional courtesy to someone who understood how vice crime operations exploited legitimate businesses. Every night from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Tony continued his routine. He checked in legitimate guests, monitored hotel security, and maintained the kind of vigilant observation that had kept him at the forefront of vice crime investigation for nearly 2 decades. Most nights, the biggest challenge was managing late arrivals and ensuring that guests had everything they needed for comfortable stays. But some nights, when his trained instincts recognized patterns that indicated criminal activity, Tony Castellano was exactly where he needed to be, between legitimate businesses and criminal networks that would exploit hospitality venues for illegal operations. Because that's what you do when you've spent your career investigating vice crimes. You don't stop protecting communities when you retire. You just find a new way to ensure that legitimate businesses remain safe from criminal exploitation. And sometimes the most sophisticated vice crime prevention in a city happens behind the front desk of a hotel operated by someone who knows exactly what criminal coordination looks like and refuses to let it corrupt legitimate hospitality businesses. Tony had spent 18 years investigating criminal networks that used hotels, bars, and restaurants as headquarters for illegal operations. Now he spent his retirement ensuring that one hotel remained a place where guests could trust they were staying at a legitimate business rather than a criminal headquarters. The mission was the same. The criminals were the same. The only difference was that now, instead of investigating vice crimes after they corrupted businesses, he was preventing criminal exploitation by recognizing operational patterns before they could establish criminal headquarters. And every night, as legitimate guests enjoyed safe, professional hotel services, Tony Castellano worked with the eyes and experience of someone who knew the difference between normal hospitality business and criminal operations, ready to protect both the hotel and the community that depended on legitimate businesses remaining free from criminal corruption. So the next time you stay at a hotel, remember that the person checking you in might have expertise far beyond hospitality management. The night auditor ensuring your safety might be the same person who spent their career investigating criminal networks that exploit hotels for illegal operations. Have you ever met someone like Tony, someone whose retirement work perfectly positioned them to protect legitimate businesses using their professional expertise? Share their story in the comments below. Tell us about the quiet professionals who never stop ensuring that businesses we trust remain free from criminal exploitation. Thank you for watching The Human Stories. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who believes in protecting legitimate businesses from criminal networks. Because the world needs more people like Tony Castellano, professionals who understand that some vigilance is too important to end with retirement. Until next time, remember that guardians come in all forms. Sometimes they wear police badges and investigate vice crimes. Sometimes they work hotel night shifts and watch for criminal patterns. But they're always protecting legitimate businesses from criminal exploitation, always ensuring that hospitality venues remain safe rather than corrupted by organized crime. And sometimes the most important vice crime prevention in your city comes from someone who spent their career learning exactly how criminal networks operate and refuses to let them exploit any legitimate business in his care.